Hello, everyone. My name is Mariana, and I'm an educator at the Natural History Museum of Utah. Today, I'm going to be leading the Q&A session, the question and answer session with our scientists today. Today, we are going to talk with Alison Zaxonis, our herbarium collections manager at the Natural History Museum. So if you have any question for her, please click the button, ask a question, or ask a question on Facebook. Hi. Hi, Alison.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you?
Great, how are you?
Hi, so I have some questions for you. Can we start?
Sure. Do you want me to start off by introducing myself, what I do, and what a herbarium is? So I'm the collections manager for the Garrett Herbarium at the Natural History Museum of Utah. And if you're unfamiliar with what an herbarium is, it is a collection of dried plant matter that is that's collected for scientific use. And you can almost think of it as like a library of dead plants, where each plant tells a story about when it was collected, where it was collected, how that environment has changed over time, and how it was different in the past. And so, as a collections manager, my job is to preserve those plant specimens to make sure that they're going to be available in the long term for use into the future, and to make those collections available for scientists.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we have some questions already about it, and it's really good that you cleared this out and explained it about a herbarium and how it works. So our first question was, what does an herbarium collections manager do at an NHMU? So thank you so much for answering.
Okay.
We have a question now from Ohio. It asks, like, are botanical and herbariums different? Can you explain this question?
Botanical gardens, was that the question? How are they different from herbarium?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So botanical gardens are living collections. They're collections of live plants, mm-hmm. And they're also very scientifically useful because they can be used for conservation, for keeping plants alive and preserving seeds and things like that. And herbaria are collections of dead and dried plant material that the plant that's preserved is, like, that plant is preserved indefinitely.
Got it. Thank you so much. And our next question is, how do you preserve a plant in a herbarium? Like, what is the best way? What is, like, the process of preserving this dry plants?
Okay, yeah, so I actually have here, it starts off in the field. We collect plants in the field with, I've got here a plant press, which we use to, you'll see in here, there's layers of cardboard and paper, and we collect plants and sandwich them in between the cardboard and blotting papers. And that presses the plant flat. The next step is to let the plant dry. So we leave it in the press to dry completely. Sometimes you need heat or, some kind of desiccant to, something to help the plant dry. Fortunately, in Utah, that's not usually the case. It dries pretty well on its own since the climate is so dry here. The next step, we freeze the plant, and that kills off any pests that might be attached to the plant, which is really important because you don't want to be introducing, like, beetles that eat paper or eat plants into the herbarium, because they could just devastate the whole collection. So we isolate the plants, we freeze them, and then we mount them. Unfortunately, I don't have an example right here, but we mount them to paper, and we glue a data label, like, on the bottom of the paper, which gives information like what the plant is, when it was collected, who collected it, and information about the habitat.
That's really, really cool then. Yeah, it seems to be like a long process, like from like getting it and like collecting and putting them, like preserving it. That's really, really cool.
It is.
Let's see, I have another question here. What is your favorite plant in the collection? Do you have a favorite one?
My favorite, okay, so my favorite plant in the collection, and I actually have, I saved a little photograph I took here. So the, just to give background, the plant is called, it's, oh, I think small flowered sand verbena, something sand verbena.
Okay.
Forgive me. And I'm going to pull up a picture here and then talk about why it's so awesome.
Awesome.
Let's see if I can share my screen.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you can share, yeah, and the green button, like green.
Okay. So, are you see?
Is it sharing?
Yeah, I think it's wanting to, you know what, let's not, can you see it at all?
Oh, I cannot see it.
Okay, let me try something else. I apologize, and maybe if this doesn't work, I'll just give up on the screen sharing situation.
Oh, it's okay, don't worry.
Oops, great. Okay. You know what? Share screen. Are you seeing it now?
No, I'm not seeing any. Oh, and now I think I'm seeing.
All right. Do you see?
Yeah, sharing. Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, great. So this is this plant. I was hiking in southern Utah a really long time ago. I would say.
I cannot see. It's like a gray thing. Like it's not showing the image.
Oh, bummer. Okay, well.
But you're sharing your screen, so. Yeah, maybe you can explain us why do you like this one specimen specifically?
I think I'm having some technical difficulties right now.
It's okay.
Can you hear me at least? Can you hear me at least?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I'll just, I'm having some technical difficulties, so I'm just gonna keep talking. So several years ago, I was hiking in southern Utah, and I came across this just beautiful, this beautiful fruiting body, this seed head that, all right, the seed head that had these capsules that look like these iridescent insect wings, and they were just so cool. And so I actually collected some, and they traveled with me like for 10 years, just from apartment to apartment. And I never really was able to find out what they were. Just a few months ago, I was processing some collections, and then I came across a sheet that had my cool sea head glued on it, and I was so excited, like, I found it. But yeah, so small flowered sand verbena, and it has just these gorgeous these capsules that are just so pretty. And I would encourage you, since my screen sharing is not working, to look it up yourself.
Maybe like a Google it. Can you maybe repeat the name again, like so like, if people can look for it if they wanna look the picture?
Sure, it's sand verbena, small flowered sand verbena.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. So you got another question. This one is from Gracie from Taylorsville in Utah. She's asking, how do you collect the plants? You kind of talked a little bit about like how you saw it like when you were hiking, but like how do you collect for the collections?
So it's important for identification purposes to get as many parts of the plant as possible. So you want to get roots, you want to get leaves, and you want to get flowers and or fruits. So so that's the main thing, is just getting as much identifying characteristics of the plant. So if that involves like if you're collecting from a tree, maybe you want to collect like some leaves and some flowers, because obviously you can't glue a whole tree to a piece of paper. Or just if it's a small herbaceous plant, just digging up the roots as well. And then when you glue it to the paper, you want to make sure that the parts of the flower are visible. So you want to arrange it so that you can see the flower parts and that you can see both the front and back of the leaves, because sometimes both sides of the leaf are important for identification. Are you able to see my face right now?
Sorry?
Are you able to see my face right now?
Yes. I'm
okay, great. I didn't know if it was still trying to share my screen or not.
Just before we continue with the questions, I just want to remind everybody who's watching, if you have any questions for Allison, please just click the Ask a Question button on our researchquestlive.org page. Or if you want to ask a question on a comment on Facebook, you can also do that. So don't be shy and ask some questions. I have another one. Abby from Salt Lake City asks, what's the biggest plant in the collection? That's one that's really cool.
Oh my gosh. So the biggest plant in our collection, our biggest object in our collection, is a tree ring section from what I believe is, I don't know the exact species, but it's a type of juniper. And it's about, I want to say like 3 or 4 feet in diameter. And so, yeah, very hard to lift up and move around. And I actually like hurt my back trying to move it.
No. I'm so sorry to hear that.
That's something that we're trying to do right now in the herbarium, is create what's called a xylarium, which is a collection of wood. And so my boss, Mitch Power, is doing a lot of research with like tree ring, looking at tree rings and looking at data that's stories that tree rings tell. And so we're getting more and more of these wood samples that are going into the collection.
That's really cool. I'm sorry to hear that you hurt your back trying to move it. So I got another question. Olive from Florida, she's asking, what's the smallest then that you have? That's a really good follow-up question from like, do you have a smallest specimen that you really have to take care in your collection?
Yeah, so off the top of my head, the smallest that I've seen would be, I believe, a type of duckweed, which is actually the smallest flower, period. And so that would be the smallest in our collection, would be the duckweed. I don't know if like there's one species that's smaller than the other, but the flowers are actually microscopic. You can't see them with your naked eye.
That's really cool. I didn't know about that. That's really big. They're microscopic, and is it difficult to preserve them, like being them so small, and so are they like really fragile? I'm sorry, it's one of my questions.
They are fragile, and it's really difficult to mount a lot of aquatic plants. And I've never done this, but I've researched into how people would mount an aquatic plant. And it involves putting the plant like on top of a water and then floating the paper up from underneath. Because otherwise you're like trying to glue these tiny things with forceps and glue, and it's just a little too difficult.
it seems a lot of like detail with the like precise work. That's really, really cool. I have another question from Gracie from Taylorsville, Utah. She's asking, how do you find make tree cookies?
I'm sorry?
Oh, how do you find or make tree cookies?
That's a good question. And I have never done it myself. But it just involves using a saw and sawing off a section, depending on what the diameter of the tree is. And, you know, we might get a section like, you know, this thick, or it might be like more like that. But that's a good question. I've actually never done it. And I know that some folks that work with Mitch will sand them down really fine so that you can see a lot of detail in the tree rings.
That's really cool. Thank you. Another question now from Luke from Murray, Utah. He's wondering if you had a favorite weed. It's really specific.
That's a great question because I love weeds, and I actually had a picture set aside to show you guys, and unfortunately I can't show my screen right now. But so my favorite weed would probably be sweet violet, and I love it because they're just these cute little purple or white flowers. You might see them come up in your lawn, and they're actually they're edible and they're yummy, and you could actually collect a lot of them. And I've never done it, but you can like make a syrup or a jelly out of them. I just like to pluck off the flowers and eat them. But there's a lot of weeds like that are edible, like dandelions, for example, are another one.
That's really cool. It sounds really cool. Do you have any of those at the museum collections?
Yes, we do.
Yes, that's really cool.
Yeah, we do.
So I have another question. Mitha from Utah is asking if are there any poisonous plants in the museum collection, the herbarium collection?
Yes, we collect you know, poisonous as well as non-poisonous plants. You just, you know, if you're handling poison ivy or something, you just need to do it with gloves on. For sure. Yeah, we have poison ivy. We have all sorts of things that you shouldn't eat, probably, like death camas.
That's awesome. Thank you. I have another question. Angela from Brazil is asking, what do you have? Do you have plants from all around the world in the museum, the NHMU collections? And what is the most exotic plant you have in your collections?
Oh, you know, okay, to answer the first question, we do have plants from all around the world. It's a global collection, but we do focus on plants from Utah specifically, and then the American Southwest. And so that's going to account for most of our collection we have about 145,000 plants. The most exotic, that's hard to answer because I guess that's in the, you know, a pretty subjective question. But one of my favorite plants is called Welwitschia. And it's the weirdest plant ever because it's just these, like, it has 2 leaves and they just grow and grow and grow and grow indefinitely. Just this plant with these 2 really, really long leaves. And we have one of those in the collection. It's not very big though, but it can get quite big.
That's really interesting. I didn't know about this plant. Is it like one of your biggest one? You said it's not that big, but it's like
no, it's not. It's not, the one in our collection is not very big, but it can get quite long in nature.
That's really cool. So before we continue, I just want to remind everyone who's watching, if you want to ask a question, please please click the ask a question button or leave a comment on Facebook for us, okay? Don't be shy, let's ask some questions. Oh, I have another one. Amy from Murray, Utah is asking, what's the best way to collect and press flowers, like for flowers specifically?
Sure. So you can buy a commercial plant press. You can get them pretty inexpensively. You don't have to buy them from a herbarium supply store or anything like that. But it's actually really easy to make your own. All you need is really some newspaper and you need some newspaper and some cardboard to layer your plants between, to have something to like press them between. But then you need a rigid frame, and that can be just like 2 pieces of wood. And you can use like straps to tie it tight or clamps to tie it tight. It's just really easy to make your own. This is not something that you need to spend any money on, really. Yeah, you can make your own press out of wood and cardboard and newspaper, and just make sure that you lay the plant out and the way that you want it to be presented when you glue it, and then keep tightening the press as the plants dry.
Got it, thank you. Our next question is from Kat. She's from Salt Lake City, and she's asking, what makes a weed different from any other kind of plant or flower?
Oh, I love this question, because a weed is something that one perceives to be where it oughtn't to be. And so, and so some people, you know, they think anything growing in their yard that they didn't plant there is a weed. To me, a weed is just a plant that has a really good strategy of taking advantage of opportunities in the environment for, you know, like growing where the soil is disturbed, or in a lawn or in a sidewalk crack. And it doesn't matter if the plant is native or not native to the area. It could be one of these really opportunistic plants, like yarrow is one, that it's a native plant, but also will just go wild if it takes root in your garden or in any sort of disturbed area. Yeah, I guess a weed just depends on what a person's attitude is toward the plant. It's kind of another subjective question. But I have a soft spot in my heart for these little opportunistic plants that can grow anywhere.
Yeah, I love it. I love that question as well. Thank you so much for answering. Let's see, I have another question from Utah. Like Cody, he's asking, what is it like working in a museum? Did you always wanted to like work in a museum? That's a great question. I love it.
Ever since I found out that one could have a career in museums, I wanted to work in a museum. I have a background working in special collections and libraries. And so I already knew that I really liked working with collections, and my undergrad work was in botany. And so it seems like a really natural, a natural coming together of my various interests. So what is it like working in a museum? It's the best. I get to work with all of these just really passionate and wonderful, smart, brilliant, interesting people, and I learn new things every day. And it's just really the best environment to be in.
Yeah, I agree for sure. Working at a museum is awesome, and I get to know like all amazing people and great scientists as well. So like you, so like that's awesome. I also love working at a museum. And I have a question, like kind of like similar to that. Like, what do you think are the skills that an herbarium collections manager have to have? Like this is one of my questions that is kind of like tied up with this Cody's question.
Yeah, so for any collections manager, you would need an extreme attention to detail and extreme organization skills, because you have to manage a huge amount of objects on one hand and then data on the other. So you've got to love spreadsheets. You've got to be into working with computers. And so those are the skills basic to the collections manager position. And then also just specifically as a botany collections manager, I have a background in botany, and it's really useful to know a little bit about plant systematics. So how plants are related to one another, how they've branched off over time, and how the naming and classification of plants is constantly changing as we learn more about plant genetics.